Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. I got a viewer question the other day asking me if I use baits with a different colored tail on it, just like these Max Scent Generals. And the answer, obviously, as you can see, is yes. And I think there are definitely times and places where a colored tail will increase the number of bites for you. And I know a lot of you probably are looking at this saying, well, I don't buy baits with a different color tail. I go ahead and I just have a couple of different like spike it dyes where I can dye the baits any way that I want. And I think that's a really good option. But I also really like to have baits that have the tail already pre-made. There's a bunch of different reasons. One of them is just simply the ease of use, meaning I don't have to pull out a bottle of dye and dip the tail in. But more so, there's a lot of baits that don't accept dye quite as well as some of the other plastics on the market, and the Max Scent is one of those. If I were to take a green pumpkin and dip it in chartreuse, I'm actually going to get more of a green tail, which I do like at times, than a chartreusey yellow tail. And that can be said for a lot of these different baits. You know, if I were to take the blue dye, dip a black in it, I'm probably not going to get a good blue colored tail on that. So if you purchase the products already with that different colored tail attached, you're going to get the most profound contrasting color, I guess is what I would say to that. And in some instances, that's really what I want. In other instances, I actually like that more natural look where the dye kind of fades into the bait. Some products, the dye actually will wear off a little bit over time versus the tails, which are just molded straight on. They're not going to change color at all. But these are three of my absolute favorites. So I would walk through you just kind of some of my color combinations that I really like. This one, black and blue with a blue tip tail. Absolute dynamite color for your Florida fisheries, any of your tannic stained lakes. We've got a lot of those up here in the North Country. There's something special about the black with the contrasting blue color on there. It generates a lot of bites. And I think that's a big part of the idea of using baits with different colors. You've got contrasting colors in a lot of instances where that creates lifelike movement. So when you're throwing something like a soft stick bait, your bait's wiggling, it looks like the fish is swimming, and that contrasting color gives the appearance that it's got like a tail figure to it. I also think in a lot of instances, it gives the fish a strike zone, meaning if you're fishing off-colored water, that the tail a lot of times can give the fish something to actually key in on. And from that standpoint, I think that's really important. And in some instances, it's more of just the lifelike appearance. So this, when you take a green pumpkin bait and mix it with a black tip tail, it looks very much like your little largemouth. I mean, that's one of the keys here, where you've got largemouth with a black tip tail. That's what that looks like. So you really can have the best of all instances when you do have that tail mixed in. You can do lifelike, you can do contrasting colors, and you can do the teaser method where it gives the fish something to strike on, and it can be something that really makes them mad. In the springtime, you use a bright color on the tail. A lot of times that's something that generates the strikes from a fish that's not looking to actively forage, but they're looking to defend a bed or their fry. So black and blue, really good for tannic water, really good for your off-colored water. The green pumpkin black tip tail is one that I absolutely love for clear water situations, and it has to do with the fact that it is a contrasting color, but it does have a very, very natural appearance. It's not a loud, bright color, and from that standpoint, in clear water, I've done very, very good on it. And then when you start talking about green pumpkin chartreuse, I don't know that I have to talk that much about this color. I mean, I think there are thousands upon thousands of anglers out there that dye the tip of their green pumpkin bait chartreuse, so it's a very, very common color. But to me, the reason it's so good is it gives the fish something to key in on. It gives the fish something that's kind of teasing them on the fall. If you fish, say, rivers up here for smallmouth or spotted bass, they go crazy over chartreuse. So you gotta have chartreuse tipped. I'm not saying you gotta use it in every instance, but there are a lot of instances where your chartreuse tailed baits will outfish just a straight green pumpkin or watermelon color. The one other color that they don't make that I would love in this Max Scent General is green pumpkin orange tip. And that's a really good color for your river fishing. And anywhere you've got a high density of crayfish being a big part of the bass forage. That's a huge color up here on the river that I live on. So I would love to see that. I do carry orange dye, so I can dye it from that standpoint, but I would love a really bright orange color. So those are some of the colors that I like, and I absolutely do like to throw baits that have a different colored tail to it. I think that there is a time and place where that will generate a lot of additional bites. Now, unfortunately, I can't sit here and say it's always under these conditions. A lot of times what I have to do is use a solid colored bait and then the solid colored bait with a different colored tail, and I do my own comparison. But it's not uncommon to find that there are certain days where one will completely outperform the other. So I do think it's very valuable in carrying both the baits that have it pre-made into it, or at least carrying some dyes so that you can adjust to it. Really good question. It's one that I think for a long time I kind of thought that having baits with the tails tipped was more of a something to catch the anglers than the fish. But at this point, I am 100% convinced that there is a very, very important factor to having that different colored tail in convincing the fish to bite your line. And it's not just a sales tactic that the companies are doing to try to make their baits look pretty so that anglers buy more of them. In fact, I would actually say of late, meaning the last 10 years, we've seen companies get away from doing that. And I don't know if that's because it's excuse me, more expensive to do that, or it's just they don't sell as good and they're trying to limit the number of SKUs that they carry and people are using dyes on their own. But of late, the last couple years, so over the last 10 years, I feel like we kind of went away from it. I do feel like over the last 2 years, we're seeing more companies start to add some different colors with the tails like that. So let me know in the comments section, do you guys prefer baits with a different colored tail, or do you prefer a solid colored bait? I'd love to hear from you guys as well. If you enjoyed today's video, hit the like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Stay tuned. We'll have a new video coming out tomorrow.